In this section, we're learning about the demand curve. The demand curve talks about the relationship between the quantity demanded of a good or a service and the price that is being charged for that good or a service. And that relationship is shown in what's called the demand schedule. The demand schedule is a table that shows us the relationship between the price and the product and the quantity demanded, holding everything else constant. What are those things that we hold constant? Well, we want to think about all the things that affect whether you want to buy a good or a service. Let's look at an example. Here we're going to look at the pizza market. So we want to think about all the things that might affect how much pizza you want to buy. The most important, or one of the main variables, is the price. And that relationship between the price and the quantity of pizza that we want to buy is what we show in the demand schedule and subsequently in the demand curve. But there are some other variables, one of which is consumers' income. Consumers' income affects how much people want to buy. If you earn more income, you tend to buy more pizza. If you earn less income, you buy less pizza, and this is true for a lot of goods and services. Another important variable is the price of substitute goods. Suppose the price of tacos or the price of sandwiches changes. Well, if there's a significant increase in the price of sandwiches, then we might buy fewer sandwiches and hence more pizza. Right? So it's the price of substitutes also affects how much pizza you want to buy, as well as the price of complementary goods, or goods that go with pizza. The example we have here is the price of lemonade. If the price of lemonade goes down and you really like to have lemonade with your pizza, then you might be willing to buy more pizza even at the same price. Two other variables that are very important are consumer preferences and consumer expectations. And we're going to see how these different variables affect the demand curve. But what we're going to look at most specifically is the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of a good or a service. And that relationship is going to be shown in the demand curve. So first we're going to look at an individual's demand curve, which shows the relationship between the price of a good and how much an individual consumer wants to buy. And we'll show that along that demand curve, the law of demand holds. The law of demand says that, as you would expect with most goods, there is a negative relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. If the price of a good or service goes up, then you would expect the quantity demanded to go down. So in this example, suppose the price of pizzas goes from $10 for a large pizza up to $50 for a large pizza. Now, that might seem extreme, but you get the idea. So if there's an increase in the price of pizza, you're going to buy fewer pizzas, everything else held constant. And that's a representation of what we call a change in the quantity demanded. When we look at a good or a service, if there's a change in how much we want to buy or are able to buy, and that is a result of a change in the price level for that good or service, we call that a change in the quantity demanded, and graphically we're going to show that as a movement along the demand curve. Now let's look at an example of an individual demand curve for pizza. So here we're looking at Al, and how much pizza Al is willing to buy at any given price. And we can see this in the table, which is called the demand schedule. So here at point A, if the price of pizzas is $10, Al is willing to buy one pizza per month. If the price of pizzas goes down to $8, Al is willing to buy more pizzas, or 4 pizzas per month. And we can show that up here on the demand curve as well, that point A is when there's a price of $10, Al is willing to buy 1 pizza per month. As the price falls, we would expect Al to buy more pizzas. That's the law of demand, and it's shown as a movement along the demand curve. Now we can see all these other points, C, D, and E, are other combinations of price and quantity, which represent the relationship of the price of pizzas and how much pizzas Al is willing to buy per month. Now let's put it together with another demand curve so we can look at what we might be interested in, which is the market demand curve. In most instances, what we really want to know is how much pizzas are demanded in the market, not for a given individual. So suppose there's 2 individuals in this market, Al and B. And we can see their individual demand curves here. This is the same one we had for Al, and here we have one for B. To get the market demand curve, what we do is what's called the horizontal sum of the individual demand curves. Here's how it works. Suppose we look at a price of $8. we can see from Al's demand curve, he's willing to buy 4 pizzas per month. From B's demand curve at the price of $8, we can see that she's willing to buy 2 pizzas per month. If that's the case, and Al and B make up the whole market, well then the total sum of pizzas that are demanded at that price are 4 plus 2 pizzas, and so the market demand curve would be 6 pizzas per month at the price of $8. At the price of $4, we can see that Al is willing to buy 10 pizzas, B is willing to buy 6 pizzas, so the market demand is 16 pizzas. So we can see here's the market demand for pizzas. Now how does this all play together when we look at an entire demand curve? Well, this is Al's demand curve. We want to know 3 things about a curve in general. What does the curve mean? What is its slope? And what makes it shift? So what does this curve mean? This curve is the demand curve. It tells us how many pizzas Al is willing to buy at any given price. So we can look at a price of $8. This is Al's demand curve. He's willing to buy 4 pizzas per month. If the price goes down, say to $4, he's willing to buy more pizzas per month. So the curve tells us the quantity demanded at any given price. It also tells us Al's willingness to pay. So for 10 pizzas per month, Al is willing to pay $4. So that's what the curve means. What's the curve slope? Well, the curve is downward sloping, and that's a representation of the law of demand. As the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. And this is going to be the case for most demand curves. So we know what it means. It tells us either the willingness to pay for a certain amount of pizzas or how many pizzas are demanded at any given price. It's downward sloping, representing the law of demand, but we also want to know what makes it shift. And in order to understand why and how a curve shifts, we need to look at all those other variables that affect the quantity demanded or the demand of pizzas. Remember, the demand curve is the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, holding everything else constant. Well, everything else isn't held constant. We had lots of other variables that affected it. One of those was income. So suppose we allow income to change. What that would represent would be at any given price, say here at $8, where Al used to be willing to buy 4 pizzas per month, Al might be willing to buy more pizzas. And that's not a point on the demand curve anymore. So that's a shift of the demand curve. So anything which increases the quantity demanded of a good or a service at every given price is going to increase demand or shift the demand curve to the right. Anything which decreases demand or lowers the quantity demanded of a given price, maybe it's a decrease in income or a change in the price of substitutes or complements that makes people want to buy less, is going to shift the demand curve to the left or down. So a good rule of thumb is to remember that a variable on the axis, either the price or the quantity for a demand curve, if one of those variables changes, we have a movement along the curve. If any other variable changes, in this instance we had income, price of substitutes and complements, consumer expectations, and other variables, if those things change that affect demand, what we'll see is a shift of the demand curve. So those are the 3 things we want to know about every curve, and that's what we see for the demand curve.